So we just got that financial report that Nintendo dropped, and many were hoping we'd see some indication of a Switch hardware revision or revisions in it, as there had been so many rumors swirling around and some hinting at new hardware dropping as soon as June, in just like a couple months. For this report though, Nintendo said nothing about new hardware to the investors, also stating that they have no plans to announce new hardware at this year's E3. Soon after that, Japanese news outlet Nikkei, who had taken part in discussing many of these rumors, fired back at Nintendo with an article restating that new hardware is coming this summer, which, as I stated in my video yesterday, seemed an odd move unless they have some seriously credible info. However, as many have also pointed out since, the wording of Nintendo's statement, what they did say, no plans to announce hardware at E3. First of all, no plans is certainly not a definite answer, but also not at E3. Think about it. How often is new hardware even announced at E3 anymore? It's become a rarity, actually. It's much more common for these things to happen outside the event these days. Could be as simple as just randomly dropping a trailer for it on YouTube one day. So while they didn't address new hardware with these reports, they didn't really do much to squash these rumors either, leading to even more speculation over them. That's why today, hopefully for the final time before we get some sort of confirmation, I'd like to discuss these potential hardware revisions, a Switch Mini and perhaps even a Switch Pro. Do we need them, and what should they look like? Let's start with the Mini, the one that I think is not only the most likely, but most likely to be coming soon as well. And financially, that will probably end up being the big moneymaker for Nintendo. I would guess it will probably be like a lot of the mock-ups we've seen, something like the 2DS, cheaper but more solid feeling, like, you know, removing the Joy-Con so it's just all one thick piece. And I really like the idea of making it dockable, but perhaps selling it without a dock. That way you obviously get the price even cheaper, and it's a better sell as a secondary Switch for people's households. Whether you're buying it for your girlfriend, your kids, whoever, there's a good chance you already have a Switch with a dock. You may have multiple docks at this point. So this would make it so you don't have to feel like you're buying something you find unnecessary. They could probably sell this thing around or below $200, maybe $200 with a game bundled with it, which I think that would be a great price point, especially for people looking to buy multiple. I actually just visited my family for Easter, right? I have a cousin with 3 boys, and she just bought the oldest one a Nintendo Switch. Needless to say, what do the other 2 want more than anything in the world now? A Nintendo Switch of their own. She, of course, would prefer them to share, doesn't want to shell out $600 for 2 more, but maybe if she could take care of them all for, say, again, around or below $400, she would do it to save her sanity. I think there are many other families in this situation, and it replicates the 3DS model, which, as I've said from day one, from the initial reveal of the Switch, that should be their goal, replicating a lot of the 3DS's successes. One of the major elements being, how do we get this system cheap enough to get multiple into the household? I also mentioned this when I discussed the online when it dropped. You know, they've got the like $35 per year family plan. Compare that to the PS4 and the Xbox One, where a single subscription starts at $60. Combine that with a cheaper model, and having multiple becomes even more enticing. In terms of this June release, yeah, that's really soon, about 2 months away. I could see it, though, coinciding with like the release of Mario Maker 2. And I would say for sure, if you have any new hardware coming out this year, you want it to be out before the release of Pokemon Sword and Shield, and you definitely want bundles to be out there in the wild with it and Sword and Shield when those games releases, because those are going to be the big system sellers this year. Yeah, I think the Mini, whatever they end up calling it, is going to sell really well. But then there's the one that likely attracts more of you, the enthusiasts, more power. And this thing seems like it could be anything from, like one outlet said, a modest upgrade, to practically a full-on Switch 2 with its own games that aren't playable on the other versions of the Switch. Here I stand by what I've been saying about a Switch Pro, or whatever this thing is going to be called. I definitely want one. There are so many games right now that would really benefit from just a little bit more juice in the system. Mortal Kombat 11, I'm playing that right now. I'm sure many of you are as well. if they could just get that resolution bumped up a bit and maybe get a few more details on the characters and environments while maintaining that frame rate, it would make a huge difference in the visual experience. Shooters like Doom, if they could get the frame rates in those games bumped up to 60 like it is in Mortal Kombat. Yeah, so many games feel like they're right on the cusp of where I want them to be, just not quite there. And I think an upgrade similar to the Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro, in terms of their leap from their past iterations, would serve the Switch very well here. That's what I would prefer to see. Again, if this is an upgrade we're going to see in the next year or so. But some of these rumors seem to suggest, like I said, an all-on, basically, Switch 2, a Super Switch, is in the works. Which, that could just mean the next system, the one that is several years off, and in that case I have no issue. But that could also mean that's what they're planning with this, initial upgrade. Something that makes games that weren't possible on the current Switch a reality. Which I get the draw of that, having games like Red Dead Redemption 2 now being possible on the Nintendo Switch, I get it. If we're talking about something that's coming soon though, that's not what I'd like to see. 2.5 or 3 years, in my opinion, is just not enough time to introduce essentially a new hardware generation. Yes, there were a couple games, that were playable only on the new Nintendo 3DS, but we'd clearly be talking about a much bigger scale here and in a fraction of the time. You definitely have a lot of people just feeling burned, I think. I mean, if I bought a Switch, like say in the next couple months and then heard a new version with games that I can't play on mine is coming out, I don't know, say Christmas time, I certainly would not be happy. And it would cause a ton of confusion for consumers. Does this game run on my version of the Switch? You'd have to do something with the boxes of all those games, and I think the big issue would be having it not be adopted wide enough to warrant much support. Like say you are Rockstar, and now because of the power or whatever, you can put Red Dead Redemption 2 on this new Switch. But that also means you can't sell to anyone with the old Switch. All of the Switches that have sold so far, any of these Switch Minis, as I mentioned in my video yesterday, the total Switch sales just cracked 34 million, and if they do go that almost next-gen leap route, for those exclusive games, none of these people, none of this 34 million install base is a potential buyer because the games don't run on these systems. And as we've seen with the Pro and the Xbox One X, the performance models don't tend to sell as well. They still get outperformed by their cheaper counterparts after launch. With third parties, I think you run the risk into having a similar issue as the Wii U, where with the Wii U, there were a lot of games that could have ran on the system, but a lot of third parties just felt it wasn't worth their time. It took a lot more work than other versions, and there wasn't a big enough install base, and the games weren't selling well enough. And with the first party stuff, your Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, etc., the big system sellers, those will still have to be on all platforms because people would just riot if you said, oh, then the Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be on this Switch Pro next year exclusively. People would be going nuts. So third-party games would also have to be the big selling point, and I just don't think it's enough to push people towards a major mid-cycle upgrade. Once more, if we're talking, say, another 3 or 4 years from now, go nuts and release a full-on Switch 2. I think people will be ready by then. But for now, though, if we've got a performance version coming, say, in the next year or so, I think it should be something that fits with the other versions, all playing the same games, just this one plays them better. And even for the third-party games, like let's say you get something that can play every game that's on PS4 and Xbox One, well, the next Xbox and the PS5 are coming out soon. So you'll almost immediately be running into the same problem where you can't run the games on those systems. That's why, I believe if they want to do like a big next-gen leap, I think it has to be when we're deep in the next-gen cycle. That way they can come out with something that is a completely new shift with new exclusive Nintendo games and also plays the current games of the day. So for the Switch Mini, I think this is something they really should want to get out as soon as possible. Like I said, definitely before Pokemon, probably before other heavy hitters like Animal Crossing as well. And with Super Mario Maker actually about to drop, it would probably be nice to have it out in the summer as soon as that would be. I think a cheaper Switch is just going to fly off the shelves. I think the base model, has proven the concept, and now the only thing keeping, in some cases, multiple out of single-family households, again, like we saw with other handheld devices, the only thing keeping that from happening is the price. With the Pro, I also think we're ready for something that plays these games a bit better, but yeah, I don't think it's time for like a major overhaul. I think it's too soon for many to want to adopt something like that. I'm sure many of you watching would. You'd probably pay $400 or $500 for something that plays everything the Xbox One and PS4 do, but I think it would take a while to get that install base to a size where many third parties would want to put these bigger games on it. Again, to reiterate, I think it was like 1 in every 5 PS4s being sold were a PS4 Pro. That was the last thing I remember seeing. Imagine if they were making games that could only be sold to the PS4 Pro players. So out of every 5 PS4s being sold, only one of them could buy your game. I just don't think that's very enticing. And again, from the consumer standpoint, with this happening so soon, only like 2 or 3 years, all the heavy Nintendo hitters, Pokemon, Zelda, Mario, etc. would have to still be playable on those old systems, so I don't think the push for many to buy this new system would be there. Anyway, with that, this video's a wrap. Let me know your thoughts on a possible Switch Pro and Mini in the comments. Do you think Nintendo is being coy about new hardware about to drop? And what do you think that hardware will look like? Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this discussion of possible Nintendo Switch Pro and Minis coming despite what Nintendo may be saying. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and if you want to keep the conversation going, hit me up on Twitter, @JohnnyZakari, and join my Discord, ChiGuy and Friends, link to both in the description below, and as always, thanks for watching.